What would happen if you discovered that a large part of your daily decisions is not made by you, but rather by an invisible force that shapes your behaviors, beliefs, and even your emotions without your awareness? How many times have you acted impulsively, only to question later, why did I do that? This may reflect what Carl Jung referred to as the collective unconscious, a deep layer of the human psyche that often controls our actions without our conscious awareness. Imagine that every day you find yourself repeating the same patterns. You wake up, have breakfast, work, go home, and everything seems to operate on autopilot. But is this autopilot really yours? Or is it merely a manifestation of parts of your psyche that you do not recognize? How can we claim to be fully aware of our lives when there are so many aspects of our minds operating beyond our consciousness? This is what we are going to discuss. Carl Jung, one of the greatest psychologists of the 20th century, presents us with a deeply revealing view of the unconscious. For Jung, much of who we are, what we feel, and how we react is governed by content we are not fully aware of. He believes that the unconscious is not just a collection of repressed desires, as Freud suggested, but rather a vast repository of universal experiences, a collective unconscious that connects all human beings. What does this mean for your daily life? It means that many of your reactions, feelings, and choices may be shaped by forces you barely understand. A simple example of this is how we deal with our fears or anxieties. Who hasn't felt an irrational fear, like the fear of public speaking, without being able to explain why they feel that way? This fear doesn't come from nowhere. It may be rooted in past experiences or collective archetypes that have formed throughout human history. Archetypes like the hero, the mother, or the wise one, which shape our behaviors, are not merely mythological figures. They are part of a collective memory that influences our lives in ways that are invisible to us. At this point, you may be wondering, am I really in control of my life, or am I being guided by these invisible forces? This is a central question that Carl Jung urges us to reflect upon. Are we merely playing unconscious roles, like an actor reciting lines without realizing that they are, in fact, portraying a character? For Jung, true freedom can only be achieved when you begin to become aware of these automatic processes and, thus, are able to direct your life more authentically. How can you start to perceive this? First, you need to understand that the unconscious is not something to be feared, but something to be explored. By observing your own reactions and emotions, you begin to uncover a vast and mysterious territory of your psyche, where the fragments of your true identity reside. The key is awareness. This is the first step to get out of autopilot and start living a more authentic life. Reflection is inevitable. To what extent is your life being directed by this invisible pilot? The unconscious, in its various forms, can be the archetype of the father, the monster, or even the child, manifesting in what you believe to be rational decisions, but which are, in reality, reflections of something deeper and unexplored. The journey towards individuation, a central concept in Jung's work, proposes exactly that, moving from automation to the recognition of who we are, of our totality. It is a slow process, but deeply revealing. With that in mind, I invite you to reflect on your own life. Are you in command or are you being commanded? How do unconscious patterns reflect in your choices and emotions? The first step to liberating yourself from this automatic influence is to look within. What is your unconscious trying to tell you? When we talk about the unconscious, it is important to understand that it is not just a part of the human psyche that holds repressed desires, as Freud suggested. Carl Jung went further, proposing a broader and deeper view. For him, the unconscious is not a mere collection of forgotten impulses, but a vast field of forces that subtly and complexly shape our lives. Jung called this phenomenon the collective unconscious. He believed that, unlike the individual unconscious, which stores personal memories, the collective unconscious is made up of experiences shared by all humanity. It is these archetypal experiences, such as the hero, the mother, or the wise one, that influence our actions in almost imperceptible ways. Each of us carries within ourselves these primordial images, which represent not only traits of our psyche but also universal patterns of behavior and reaction. The concept of archetypes, therefore, is central to Jung's view of the unconscious. These archetypes are not just mental images, but molds that help us interpret the world and behave in specific ways. They are patterns of thought and action that are present in all aspects of our lives, in mythologies, religions, the stories of our childhood, and even in our own dreams. Jung believed that most of what we do, feel, and think is influenced by these archetypes, often without our awareness of it. This is the central point of Jung's proposal: as long as we are immersed in these unconscious patterns, our freedom of action will be limited. To achieve true autonomy, it is necessary to make these invisible processes visible, a crucial step toward achieving individuation, the process of self-knowledge and integration of the psychic totality. To understand how the collective unconscious and archetypes shape our lives, we can look at historical, mythological, and even personal examples. A classic example is the hero's journey, a concept that was profoundly developed by Joseph Campbell but also has roots in Jung's theory. The journey, which appears in myths, legends, and even modern films, is a direct reflection of a universal archetype: the hero who sets out on a quest, faces challenges, and returns transformed. This model reflects an internal process that we all face at some point in life, a struggle against our own shadows, that is, those parts of ourselves that we deny or do not understand. Jung believed that the shadow, the unknown and often repressed side of our psyche, is one of the most powerful forces of the unconscious. This archetype arises to alert us to the aspects of our personality that we avoid confronting. And just like the hero in mythology, we can only integrate these dark aspects when we face and acknowledge them. Another fascinating example comes from the story of Joan of Arc, who, according to Jung, exemplifies the manifestation of a strong feminine archetype, the warrior. Joan was a historical figure whose actions cannot be fully explained by history alone. They are also an expression of the archetype of a woman who hears her inner voice and acts according to it, even against all the social conventions of her time. These examples show how archetypes are not just characters in ancient stories, but living forces that permeate our daily lives. When we recognize these patterns, we can better understand our own motivations and internal conflicts, and thus advance in our own process of individuation. Although Jung's ideas about the collective unconscious and archetypes are deeply philosophical and psychological, they also resonate in modern sciences, such as neuroscience and quantum physics. Jung believed that the human psyche is not something isolated, but rather a complex network of interactions, both internal and external. In this sense, he was ahead of his time in suggesting that our thoughts and emotions are influenced by forces beyond our conscious perception. In modern neuroscience, the idea that the brain processes information beyond our consciousness is well established. Studies on neuroplasticity demonstrate that our brain is constantly reshaping itself, not only through personal experiences but also through broader and collective patterns. Jung's collective unconscious, then, can be seen as a reflection of the neural connections that link us to all of humanity, similar to the way we learn behaviors and skills without actively thinking about it. Furthermore, quantum physics has shown us that reality is not fixed, but depends on observation and interaction. Discoveries that subatomic particles can exist in multiple states at the same time, and that our perception can influence what we observe, can be interpreted in light of Jung's idea that our psyche is connected to the cosmos in ways that we do not yet fully understand. He believed that there is a psychic reality, just as there is a physical reality, that is influenced by invisible forces. These concepts, which traverse psychology, philosophy, and science, challenge us to reevaluate what we know about our mind and our place in the universe. If the human mind is connected to something beyond itself, this opens doors to a deeper understanding of our true nature. Now, imagine for a moment, how many times have you found yourself repeating the same behavior patterns, reacting to certain situations almost automatically, without fully understanding why? Perhaps you overreact in a discussion, or feel inexplicably drawn to a certain type of person or situation. This is not coincidence, it is the collective unconscious in action, shaping your behavior without your awareness. When we talk about individuation, the process that Jung proposed as the key to achieving psychic wholeness, we are referring precisely to the ability to recognize these automatic patterns and take the reins of them. You have probably encountered situations that seem to repeat themselves constantly. These situations are often reflections of archetypes or the shadow, the part of ourselves that we reject or deny. When you become aware of this, you start to transform these automatic reactions into conscious choices. Let's put this into practice. Consider a situation where you feel stuck in a cycle of behavior, such as a toxic relationship or a habit of procrastination. What is behind this repetition? There is something in your unconscious that is being projected for you to continue living this pattern. It may be that, on some level, you are responding to an archetype of victim or savior, based on past experiences or cultural influences. Recognizing these patterns is the first step to freeing yourself from them. By connecting with your inner archetypes and understanding the role of the shadow in your life, you begin to make more conscious choices that align with who you really are, rather than being driven by the invisible forces that shape your psyche. As we deepen our understanding of the unconscious, a new perspective unfolds. What if what we call automatic or unconscious is not just a repetition of old patterns, but a form of inner wisdom waiting to be recognized? Instead of seeing the unconscious as something to be dominated or eliminated, what if it is, in fact, a force that brings essential messages for our evolution? This idea challenges the traditional view that the unconscious is just a shadow we must control. Instead, Jung proposed that the unconscious can be a vital source of insight, an internal voice that guides us. This perspective views the unconscious not as an obstacle but as an ally, helping us navigate life in a more authentic and integrated way. This is where synchronicity comes in as an important factor. Jung believed that seemingly random and disconnected events could actually be linked by deep and hidden meanings. Often, when we connect with our unconscious, we begin to notice patterns and connections that previously seemed like mere coincidence. This view can be unsettling, as it requires us to trust in something that goes beyond reason and logic. For example, you might have the feeling of being in the right place at the right time, without knowing exactly how you got there. This is the kind of synchronicity that Jung believed to be a manifestation of the collective unconscious, guiding us along paths that our conscious mind cannot fully understand. By accepting this perspective, we start to see the world in a more integrated way, where the conscious and unconscious work together in harmony. After this deep exploration, a vital question arises: what does it really mean to be aware of our automatic behaviors? What happens when we understand that our psyche is not an isolated entity but part of a collective network of symbols, archetypes, and experiences? The truth is that, by becoming aware of our automatic reactions, of our shadow, and beginning to integrate these forces, we can reach a new level of self-knowledge and inner harmony. Now imagine that by recognizing your automatic patterns, you no longer see yourself as a victim of the same mistakes. You begin to realize that by observing the archetypes and the invisible forces that shape your choices, you have the ability to steer your life towards something more aligned with your true self. In doing so, you are not only transforming your psyche but also influencing the world around you. Jung believed that individuation, or the process of becoming who we truly are, is the key to achieving psychic wholeness. This does not mean eliminating parts of ourselves but integrating them in a healthy and balanced way. By doing this, we can break free from the automatic cycles of behavior that limit us, embracing a more authentic existence. Now, I invite you to reflect: to what extent are you living on autopilot? What has your psyche been trying to tell you through these repetitions and unconscious behaviors? True freedom comes at the moment we can look inward and recognize the forces that shape us, without fear, without repression. If this reflection has touched you in some way, do not hesitate to share your thoughts in the comments, like the video, and subscribe for more content like this. After all, the journey towards self-awareness never ends.